name's Alan Graf. I'm a civil rights attorney. I'm also a member of the farm community in Summertown, Tennessee. I'm here today at the farm school. Today, the farm school and members of the farm community take a trip to the School of the Americas to be there as part of the vigil against the School of the Americas, where they teach torture and give PhDs in torture. This, for me, is a strange and personal journey as well. Back in 1976, I worked for Plenty International, the relief and development arm of the farm. I went down there, I helped build schools and water systems. I also adopted a Guatemalan girl. That girl's father, Esteban, was kidnapped by Guatemalan death squads. Those death squads were trained by School of the America graduates. And so today, I go back in time and go back to the place where the murderers of my daughter's father reside. I'm here today with the farm school, and these are some students I actually teach in a radical civics course. We're headed to School of the Americas, and I'm here with also the farm principal, Peter Kindfield. Peter, why are you taking a bunch of students to the School of the Americas?
Well, I think that this is one of the most important protests, annual protests in America. School of the Americas is a horrible place that most people are not even aware of. And the part of the nature of this particular protest that I love so much is that you have such an incredibly wide variety of folk attending, everything from anarchist youth to Catholic nuns, all gathered together to peacefully protest and do acts of civil disobedience to close a terrorist training institution on our soils.
Okay, I'm here with Doug Stevenson, and Doug and I go way back to Guatemala. We spent a couple years working in Guatemala together on a Plenty project. We saw some of the some of the effects and results of the School of the Americas down there. People being killed by Guatemalan death squads. And here we are 30 years later, both of us going down to Fort Benning on this journey. What do you think about all this, and what's it like for you to go down here to the School of the Americas?
Well, you know, I feel like sort of a sense of duty to represent the folks from Guatemala that we got to know and that have faced the atrocities directly. And, you know, it's a very heart-moving, it's like going to a service, you know, or to say a prayer for all those folks.
Liz, you're going down to the School of Americas this time. What are you going to tell them? You going to raise hell?
Well, you got to raise a little hell if you're going to get to heaven, because that's part of it. And there's a lot of people in hell because of the School of Americas. And it's not just something that happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's happening now. There's people dying in Colombia and Paraguay and Guatemala and all of those places because of what the people are trained to do in the School of Americas.
Okay, I'm here with Pico Cassini, musician and world traveler extraordinaire. What's happening?
Well, I'm just excited to be a part of the team, excited to be with the farm school and taking part in this. It's called a protest, but really to me it's a vigil. And it's a way to honor the dead and the dying all over the world, and just really a way to open up our heart and feel the pain so that we can be stronger and have more love to make a difference in this world.
Coming down here has just brought up a lot of emotion for me, and just made me think about, you know, what happened 30 years ago, you know, down in Guatemala. I just start remembering my good friend Esteban Chu and his son Jose Chu. As I said, Esteban was the father of my adopted daughter Maria, and he was a really good man. He was really cared about his people. He worked to bring in water systems to the villages of Chuy Manzana, and which is near Sololá, Guatemala, and just, you know, coming down here and facing this organization, this institution that trained the people, you know, that eventually murdered him. It's just, you know, just bringing up a lot of things for me, a lot of emotion, and thinking about, you know, how hard the Guatemalan people have had it. Okay, we're here at the SOA, and we've met Deborah Barros Fince. Why are you here today at the School of the Americas Vigil?
Buenas noches a todos.
It is my third time being here at the School of the Americas protest. I came this time to tell the story about what the paramilitary did in my village in Colombia. The commanders of the Army in Colombia are trained at the SOA, and those commanders in turn train the paramilitary to act as assassins. We don't want this training to continue. Members of my family were victims of a paramilitary attack on my village in 2004, where 12 people were massacred. It was horrible. They killed the women and the children, cut off their heads, and burned people. The people that survived fled to Venezuela. It was horrible to be living during those days because nothing like this had ever happened in our town. The Army and the paramilitary together performed these atrocities in my village. We did not know they were coming. At the time, I was working 2 hours away from my village. The people of my village did nothing to provoke this attack. The town is a natural port with easy access to a large amount of coal. The indigenous people that live there do not want to sell their land, so by killing them, the land could be taken. I am now working in Bogota to let my people know what happened. I am denouncing what happened and appealing for justice. It is dangerous to be doing this, but I have a responsibility to my family and my village to speak out.
Carol, we've just spoken with Deborah about this horrible massacre that happened in Colombia, and she's told us about it, told us why it happened, and gave us the connection to the School of the Americas. Tell us about your organization and how you're connected with Deborah and what's going on in terms of your work here and in Colombia.
Okay. Yes, we work on the we are Bridges Across Borders, and we say that our mission is to dissolve the imagined and imposed borders between us. So that's the stereotypes that we've been taught about each other, as well as those imaginary lines imposed by governments. And so we work on the border of Panama and Colombia in the Darien jungle and the Chocó region, where we started in Darien because there was a massacre in Chocó, and we went to receive the community there. We also have projects on the border of Arizona and Mexico, and also in Southeast Asia, some projects. One of my comadre, one of our board members, Ana Maria Vasquez, who's an incredible eco-artist, I was down in the jungle in Darien, and she handed me a magazine, which was an interview with Deborah. And I read it, and she said, we should bring this woman, and I said, let's do it. So that's what we did. We decided that it would be important for her to come to the School of Americas to tell her story, and so we made the connection, and we brought her. This is the third year that we have brought her here to speak and address the crowd about her situation.
All right, so what are a bunch of young folks like you doing here at the School of Americas Vigil?
I think logistically, we're here through Boston College Campus Ministry. I think on a more spiritual or practical social justice level, we're here for education, networking, inspiration, maybe a little, all of that melted into one, hopefully, which will inspire us to action, I hope.
I guess just on a personal level for me, I was here last year, and I'm back here again just because a lot of the people that were trained at the School of Americas influenced Argentina, and that's where I was born. And so I kind of feel that on a personal level, and just in general, the atmosphere here, the people here are just so dedicated and so motivated in all aspects of social justice, and it's just a really positive environment, and that's what kind of inspired me to come back here.
Yeah, we've been having meetings all semester leading up to the School of the Americas protests, and we've learned a lot about the atrocities committed by a lot of the graduates. And since we definitely don't condone the techniques that the school has been training its students in, we wanted to come down and really put our beliefs into action and kind of fight for what we believe is right, and really stand up for the Jesuit motto, men and women for others. And that's what we want to be, and we want to talk to people who also believe that.
Are any of you going to get arrested?
I don't think so.
We'll see. We'll see. The heat of the moment might take us.
So something like that is something that you would consider in terms of making a statement?
I would definitely consider it. If it'll happen or not in this case, we'll have to see.
Right. Well, we definitely admire Gandhi and Martin Luther King and their views on nonviolent protest. So if that were to happen, then I think we would all stand up for our beliefs and follow through with it. But we'll see what happens on Sunday.
Have you been out here as part of the police response to the vigil here for 4 years?
Yes, I've been out here for several years.
Okay, and what's the vigil like? Are the people here peaceful? Are they confrontational? What's it been like?
We've not had a lot of problems here. 1 year we had some problems with the sit-in, but other than that, after the parade permit had expired, our demonstration permit, basically a calm group. That's what we're hoping for again this year.
All right, we're here at a Witness for Peace gathering at the SOA, and I'm here with Gail Ferris and a bunch of students who've just gone down to Nicaragua and served as Witness for Peace observers, right? And Gail, you're one of the founders of Witness for Peace, right? Could you tell us what inspired you, what helped get this organization going?
Well, we went to the border in April of 1983 with a group from North Carolina. And when we arrived at a village that was under attack, they stopped shooting. We were close to Honduras. And so Dr. Jeff Boyer from Appalachian State said, well, if all it takes is to have Americans in the war zone, let's call for a vigil. And that was the original idea. By July, we had 157 people from 37 states, and the Witness for Peace began. We became the longest nonviolent presence in an active war zone that anybody knows in history, and it's affected our lives in a great and wonderful way.
Why send Witness for Peace observers down to Nicaragua?
Well, I think as far as, at least for the teen delegation, it's really a way for us to, really have our eyes opened and experience something for the first time, experience, third world poverty for the first time. It was certainly, the first time I'd ever done anything like this, so.
How does Witness for Peace relate to the School of Americas, what you're doing?
Well, the soldiers of the dictator Somoza were trained at Fort Gulick in Panama by the School of the Americas. So the killings that were going on, and later they would shed their uniforms and become Contras and terrorize the civilian population. Today we're working in Colombia, where there's a war going on. I just got back 2 weeks ago from Colombia, and we're pouring gasoline on a fire in Colombia. And it's not just the military war. The School of the Americas soldiers are trained to support a system, economic system, that exploits poor people for the benefit of the wealthy. And so it's important to understand why of the School of the Americas. It's about economic interests. It's about oil. It's about war. And so we, the United States, have to change this. We've got to close this school. We've got to change our government. And we need to be empowered and hopeful enough to do that, to work to do that. And it takes a lifetime. It's not something you do for a week or for a year. It's a lifetime. And these young folks are beginning at 15 and 16 years old, and they'll be at it for the rest of their lives, just as I have.
The Jesuits, what do we say?
Close down the SOA.
For El Mozote, what do we say?
Close down the SOA.
Close down the SOA.
Close down the SOA.
Close down the SOA. Close down the SOA.
We're here in front of the convention center talking with two lovely ladies who are here. I guess you're a part of the here for the SOA Vigil?
Right. Yes, and this is my 9th time I've come.
9th time. And how many times have you been here?
This is my 4th.
Okay. And why are you here?
Well, I spent time in Guatemala. I've heard stories of the tortures and the disappearance and the killings, and they cannot speak, so I've come to speak for them.
Okay. And have you been in Guatemala as well?
Yes, I just returned from Guatemala. I was a peacekeeper for Nonviolent Peace Force for 10 weeks. The unit still continues through February, and we're protecting human rights workers.
Okay. What part of Guatemala were you at?
I was in Santa Apolonia, where we have an orphanage for the thousands of children who have been orphaned by the civil war in Guatemala. I've also in the city, Guatemala City, but we have missions in about 4 or 5 other places in Guatemala.
Are you part of some particular church?
Yes, I'm a school sister of St. Francis. I'm a Roman Catholic nun.
Okay, very great. And are you part of the same church as well, or?
No, I'm actually a Unitarian, but my affiliation is with American Friends Service Committee. I was in Guatemala in between 63 and 65, and so I'm here to speak for my friends who suffered unspeakable violence in the 60s and 80s and 90s, and just having come back from Guatemala with Nonviolent Peace Force, I saw terrible things happening, and I want us to extricate ourselves from this and to do everything we can to stop the violence.
A lot of people here are Christian-based, and could you talk a little bit about that, the connection between Christian theology, as far as you see it, and working against the School of the Americas?
As far as a Christian, but I think it doesn't matter. We pray to the God, whether it's Allah or Jehovah or Yahweh or Jesus, we want peace. And that's the big thing right now. It's not whether you are non-Christian or Christian, one God.
We're downtown. We're here in downtown Columbus, Georgia. This appears to be a counter-demonstration to the vigil that's going on at Fort Benning. So you can see there are just a number of servicemen here. In fact, I wonder if this is sort of a distraction to get all the servicemen off the base so they don't have to watch the people who are during the vigil.
This is God Bless Fort Benning. A lot of people say we're counter-protesters. We're not. If we protest anything, it's terrorism. We thought that with the negativeness of the protesters with our soldiers, that they needed to be commended for what they do. And so we're here to support our soldiers. We're not here to do anything with SOA.
So here we are at the School of America's Vigil, and we actually just went over to what they call a counter event. And some of the folks there said they were there just to support the troops and make sure they felt like they were being supported while this other negative thing was going on over here. What would your comments be about that?
Well, what we're doing here is not about not supporting the troops. Quite frankly, what happens at this school, at the School of the Americas, or WINSEC, which they've now named it, I think diminishes the work that our troops do. This school has been tied to torture. This school has been tied to human rights abusers who have committed some of the worst atrocities in Latin America. That's not what this country's about. Well, the people who are gathered here love this country very much. We want to make it better. We want to stand for the things that we believe this country should stand for. So, I'm very proud to be here.
And?
The School of the Americas, or WINSEC as it's called today, is a very small part of Fort Benning. We're not talking about all of Fort Benning or all of the military, as Congressman said. This is one particular unit, the School of the Americas, which has a horrible history, and it represents the very worst of U.S. military involvement anywhere in the world.
We noticed a bunch of soldiers were at this event. Do you think they're trying to draw them to this event so they can avoid seeing the message that the people here came to present?
Nobody can ignore the message that is the people here are presenting. There are, thousands and thousands and thousands of people from all across the country who have come here to say that we don't want to be associated with the School of the Americas. We don't want no more torture. No more Guantanamos, no more Abu Ghraibs. I mean, we're a better country than what's on display here. The people who are gathered here are patriots who love this country, who want to beckon it to a higher standard. People can come up with alternative events to try to ignore what's happening here, but there's no way to ignore this message. I mean, this is loud and clear. people of every age, of every background, all across the country have come here to say enough is enough. We need to stand foursquare and out loud for human rights.
Do you think, as somebody of faith, do you believe that how does this tie into your faith and religious practice in terms of what's happening here?
Well, we think the gospel calls everybody to work for justice as part of building up the kingdom, and we're all going to be judged on how we deal with our neighbor who's in need, who's hungry, who's starving, who's poor, who's sick. That's the basis of our judgment. So our faith is perfectly linked with our commitment to justice.
One other question, Congressman: what moves have the legislature made in terms of abolishing the School of Americas, and what do you see happening in the future?
Well, I've been the sponsor of legislation and the sponsor of amendments to shut the school down. We had a vote last June. We came within a handful of votes of actually shutting the school down. We're going to keep on coming back and coming back and coming back until we prevail. The other thing we're trying to do is to get the school to release the names of the people who go here and the instructors. They've decided to classify all those names. I actually put some language in the defense appropriations bill that would force them to make the names public. In the House-Senate Conference Committee, the Pentagon came in and they changed the language to say that they would only release the names of the defense committees and in a classified format. That's unacceptable. If the people who run this school want us to believe that only Boy Scouts go to the school and that the people who leave here become Eagle Scouts, then they shouldn't be afraid about letting us see the names. Let the sun shine in. Let the people know what's going on here. I think they're hiding something, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Let us pray for the world that we love. Let us pray for the light given from above. Let us pray for the earth, the perfect gift. Let us pray for the hopes of peace that we lift. And why must we fight in a world that is dry?
What are the Maryknolls? Is it a religious order?
Yes, the Maryknoll is a family of Catholic religious communities. We are missioners, work in about 40 countries around the world and in the United States. There are Maryknoll lay missioners, Maryknoll sisters, Maryknoll fathers and brothers, and our office works for all of them, trying to bring their experience around the world into the process of shaping U.S. foreign policy and U.S. opinion.
What are the Maryknolls doing here right now in terms of the SOA? What connection do you have?
Well, Maryknoll priest, Father Roy Bourgeois, is one of the founders of this campaign to close the School of the Americas. Our missioners have worked in many, many communities that were devastated or seriously harmed by people who were connected with this school, people trained by those who were trained at this school. So we have, as a very major part of our work, commitment to try to educate about the impact of the former School of the Americas and to close it. We think that it has tremendous symbolic weight in terms of U.S. presence in the world.
What is Blackwater's connection, or stopping Blackwater, connected to the SOA, the School of the Americas?
Well, Blackwater is just one of over 150 private military companies in the United States, as well as there's private military companies in England, France, and other countries. Blackwater has another company called Greystone, which is formed in Barbados, and they're located offshore. They do work for other governments other than the United States. They also employ soldiers, former soldiers of the Colombian Army, former soldiers of Pinochet of the Chile Army, and they also employ Honduran soldiers. So the other connection they have with South and Central America is that they've just purchased Brazilian fighter planes, and they're also training law enforcement people in South and Central America.
you see any consistency between sort of the moral compass or lack of moral compass of like armed mercenaries like Blackwater and the School of the Americas?
Oh, yes, there's a lot of comparison there. One of our concerns is that when we are successful to get the School of Americas closed, is that Blackwater will step in and start doing some of the same type of training. For example, they're under investigation for being connected with the flights of rendition, flights for torture. CACI, another private military firm, has been cited for 43 abuses of torture in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay, places like that. So yes, strong connection between those two. And they're also employing former graduates of the School of Americas in their private company.
Why are you here today?
Well, because I'm interested in shutting down an organization that has systematically provided assassins and killers to Latin America. I'm concerned in general about the whole issues of Latin America and our relationship to it.
Do you see any connection between how our government has treated like people of color in Latin America and people of color here in the United States?
Absolutely. I think oftentimes it's about taking people, whoever they are, and dominating them for your own good and for your own profit, allowing businesses to go in at the expense of human rights. And I see that that's the same thing that slavery was. Essentially, slavery was not just about racism, but it was about dominating people, making them work for free, and controlling them so you can get profit. And I see that kind of profit motive going on in Latin America as well. So
we have all these lawyers here, legal observers, and we just interviewed the chief of police this morning. He said there's not going to be any trouble, so why do we need a bunch of lawyers?
Well, we hope there's no trouble during the protest, but we have a legal collective that helps represent people if they are arrested during the protest, but also there's been a historical movement in this School of the Americas watch of Sunday that people cross onto the base in active civil disobedience to protest against the training that goes on here in the human rights violations.
Yeah. And I see you have your legal observer's hat on. How do the legal observers play a part in that civil disobedience?
Well, we just observe the civil disobedience and document what's happening, make sure everybody's names have been turned into the collective, and make sure if there is any police brutality, it's recorded and observed. But we're mainly here just to try to so that the authorities know that they're being watched.
What kind of violations are happening behind the fence there?
Well, the history of it is that almost all the massive human rights violations in Central and Latin America have been perpetrated by people who have been trained here in counterinsurgency. So they have documented that they taught torture, actively taught it, and they've had gotten the manuals out. Those manuals have been distributed to military people in a dozen countries. And even people who have been here in the last couple of years, we have tracked them to the extent that we can because they're trying to hide who the students are here now. We tracked them, and that they have also been involved in human rights atrocities.
Yeah. A lot of people think that torture just surfaced in the Bush administration, but isn't it true that, in fact, we've been promoting and giving PhDs in torture? We would have to indict every president back to Eisenhower. Wouldn't that be true?
Well, not just the presidents, but the attorney generals, the secretaries of defense, secretaries of state. I mean, the documentation on the unfortunate documentation, I guess it's the documentation of our unfortunate history in terrorism and torture. It certainly goes back into the 1950s, 1960s, and the United States is a little more trying to be a little more hidden about it in the last couple of months since the whole world is paying closer attention. But the truth is the rest of the world has paid attention for a long time. But us in the United States, we've been in this fog of self-induced ignorance when people around the world do know what our country's been involved in.
Right. Thank you very much, both of you, for your good work. The people we've been running into here are just amazing people, very high-spirited, full of heart, very articulate, and really focused. It's kind of like, in a way, like Woodstock, but we all grew up, you know, and it's not just about partying anymore, although still there's a sense of community and solidarity here that we had back then when we were young hippies, but now we're older and wiser, and we still haven't lost our joy and our exuberance for the world, but we now have something else. We have a seriousness of purpose. We realize that the weight of the world is on our shoulders. It's our responsibility to our fellow human beings to make sure that we're all taken care of.
I'm from Task International, Torture Abolition and Survivor Support Coalition, and I'm a torture survivor from El Salvador.
Okay, you're a survivor from El Salvador. Mm-hmm. What did you survive?
I was working with the church in 1980 when I was 17 years old. I was kidnapped by the National Guard and taken to a basement. In the basement there was the chamber of torture. They tortured me there for 3 days, and they was trying to make an interrogatory about my relation with the guerrillas, but I never answered any question because my work was with the church. I was working with Sister Dorothy Kaisel and Jean Donovan, 2 of the 4 church women killed in the same year in 1980 on December 2nd in El Salvador.
Yeah. And besides you, or is anybody else grabbed from your village by the National Guard?
Yes, 17 of the 35 lay missionaries in El Salvador from my village were killed in 1979 and in 1980. Yeah.
And here you are at the School of the Americas. What does that have to do with what's happened in El Salvador?
The torturers of me, they was trained here. The same people killed the church women. Here is this is the picture of those church women killed. And I was working with her, with Sister Dorothy and Jean in La Libertad. So now the same thing are happening again in El Salvador. On September this year, a friend of mine who is a journalist, Salvador Sanchez, was killed by the death squad. This year.
Go down, Moses, Moses.
Carlos, you're from El Salvador?
I am from El Salvador. I came to the United States right after I left the prison.
And you were in prison in El Salvador?
I was a professor at the University of El Salvador. In June 1983, a special unit of the Army came to my classroom to kidnap me.
In the middle of the class?
In the middle of the class, yes. We call them death squads. A group of heavily armed men wearing civilian clothes.
And what excuse did they give for just taking you out of your class? Was it in front of your students?
In front of everybody, with a lot of witness, co-workers, colleagues, students. When I was taken to the chamber of torture, the main accusation was that I was a terrorist, that I was a subversive, that I was an insurgent, that I worked in the opposition, in the armed opposition. And indeed, I was in the opposition, but I'm not in the armed opposition.
Yeah.
But also, what indeed amounts to big mental torture is the fact that the
The torturer forced me to listen other people being tortured. I heard people being given electroshocks. I heard people being asphyxiated. I heard people being given waterboarding. I heard people being beaten. I heard women being raped. And I knew that I was next. Torture is not for getting information. Torture, indeed, wherever information is gotten through torture, is useless. And we know that. Any information, any intelligence gotten through torture is meaningless. Because we do confess wherever the torturers are asking us to confess. And I did. I did confess. I was in the chamber of torture. I am a person. I'm a person who can say it. I was in the chamber of torture, and I indeed confessed to what the torturers were asking me. And they want me to confess that I traveled to Cuba. I never been in Cuba, never ever in my life I've been in Cuba. But after 9 nights of being tortured, I accepted. Later, as I was taken out of the chamber of torture, then they took away the blindfold from me. As they took away the blindfold from me, then I was able to look at the surrounding, and then I find out that I was in the National Police Headquarters.
Wow.
And indeed, those guys who came to kidnap me and torture me were members of the National Police. Every single step of what happened to me in 1983, it is repeated now in Iraq, in Guantanamo, in Basra, and in the clandestine cell that the CIA runs. So it happened to me in 1983. However, it's exactly what's happening now in Iraq, the method of torture that the U.S. Army is using. Therefore, it is clear to come to the conclusion that the Salvadorians came to get trained here. And they trained here and they went back to San Salvador. And now the masters are carrying out the torture.
You understand you filed a lawsuit about all of these atrocities that were committed against you. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, by the first time it was possible to bring to justice 2 Salvadorian generals here in the United States. In Florida in 2002, me and 2 other Salvadorian torture survivors, Juan Romagosa and Meredith Gonzalez, we filed a lawsuit against the Generals Garcia and Generals Vides Casanova, both former Minister of Defense in El Salvador, and they were found responsible for the torture and kidnapping of the 3 of us. It was the very first time that it happened. It's the very first time that human rights abuses has been in accountability. It was the very first time that 2 big generals were accused and indeed found responsible for what happened. Now, our case has been the basis for other human rights cases. Yeah. Our case is the landmark. It's the case used by other human rights advocates to bring justice to other perpetrators.
And one of the places we visited today was the God Bless Our Troops rally located just a few blocks from the convention center here, and it was sort of a surreal type of event. Many young folks there in uniform had been bussed in from Fort Benning. And here we are tonight, just a few blocks away from that event at the convention center, where you can see around me are young folks as well, not in uniform, but here gathered together. And it's really, the contrast is quite remarkable. These young folks here are here out of idealism, are here because they want to be here. They're here out of something that stirs them from the heart. Quite a contrast. We're here Sunday morning in front of the gates of Fort Benning when the procession, the funeral procession, will be marching. Right at the gates here we see a sign that says no squirt guns, no BB guns, no large crosses, but smaller crosses permitted. And all of the people who are here for the vigil are filing in. once again at the day of reckoning, when people will express whatever they want to express through their hearts about the horrors that have been taught here for years and years at the School of the Americas. William, you're looks like you're a veteran.
I am a veteran. I was First Lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers from 59 to 62.
And why are you here today?
I'm here today because I'm against the war. I've been against the war since I got out of the Army. It's the war we're fighting today is senseless, stupid, vicious. We want to end that. The other reason I'm here is we want to make war, going into battle for our soldiers. We're patriotic. We want to make it a remote possibility. We want to get rid of the assumption, attack the assumption that the only way we can defend the country and promote liberty is through armed violence.
We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. Caminamos en la luz de Dios. Caminamos en la luz de Dios. Caminamos en la luz de Dios. Caminamos en la luz de Dios.
Bring it on down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Lift your heads and hold them high. Lift your heads and hold them high. Veterans are passing by. Veterans are passing by. Tell them what we're marching for. Tell them what we're marching for. Peace and justice, no more war. Peace and justice, no more war. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong?
How can you argue with the veterans? How can you argue with the priests? These folks are for the soldiers. They are the soldiers. And hear their message loud and clear. No more war. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, first of all, congratulations on your run for President of the United States.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. We're, of course, at the gates of Fort Benning, Georgia, where they've changed the name, but the game remains the same. And that is expansion of training that goes against the very grain of what we as a country are supposed to stand for. War is not an acceptable energy policy. War is not an acceptable labor policy. We need to be talking about peace, and that's what these people who are assembled here today are for. We are for a just world and a peaceful world.
This is a special day for you, I assume. And what does this day have in terms of significance for you personally?
Well, of course, I'm back here in my home state. I was born in Georgia. And the world literally watched as our governor asked for prayer so that we could get rain. We are in a drought here. We've been in a drought for the last 8 years in Georgia. But our governor forgot something. He forgot that there's a base here that trains people, that has a record of training people to inflict terrorism around the world, that inflicts coups, inflicts pain and torture and crimes against humanity and crimes against peace, even genocide. So we are here to say no more of that. We ain't gonna study war no more. And people now are willing to put their very lives on the line to say no more war.
Thank you very much. If you look at the gates, there's little flowers, there's a sign, "We can find hope here," and a sign that says U.S. nuns killed with U.S. guns in El Salvador. The convergence of hope and peaceful thoughts with the fence that is the demarcation line where the school of assassins resides and still keeps going.
thank you on this beautiful Georgia morning. When we take in the light of day, we can reflect on the light within our souls, within our hearts, that brings us together this morning to bear witness to that light and to bear witness to the undeniable truth and to the imperative of human unity, that we are all one, that we are interconnected, that we are interdependent, that the founding principles of this country were not simply about a United States, they were about human unity, that the spirit of the world speaks to the power of human unity, that what brings us here today in defense of our brothers and sisters throughout Central and South America is a belief that we are one with them, is a belief that whatever happens to them affects us, is a commitment to the spiritual principles which say that we are our brother and sister's keeper, that whatever we do for the least of our brethren, we do for the Lord, that we understand that by acting upon that oneness, by acting upon a sense of spiritual commitment, by coming from a place of moral conscience and moral leadership, we then become agents of a powerful transformation of the social, political, and economic system, and that we are here today to speak not only to Georgia and to Fort Benning, but we are here today as one voice to speak to the world, to say that we reject war as an instrument of policy, to say that in the oneness which unites us in this very moment, we shall become as a mighty force which will move inexorably and undeniably towards establishing peace as a formational and foundational principle of this country. I commit to you that if I'm elected President of the United States, that one of my first acts in office will be to close this school. But we must remember that it is not simply about a piece of real estate here at Fort Benning, that the type of thinking which produced the School of Americas is the same type of thinking that in our recent defense budget retrofits B-2 bombers to be able to drop 30,000-pound bombs on nuclear research labs in Iran. We need to be ever vigilant of our democratic principles and of our liberties, because it's all on the line today. We need to continue to be witnesses for peace, to continue to be witnesses for social and economic justice, to never fear to challenge authority when authority is taking us down the path of destruction and ruin, and to stand up for the deeper meaning of America, which is truth, which is justice, which is humanity, which is human unity, which is a oneness, which is the America of our hopes, which is the America of our dreams. We shall reclaim that country. We shall call it our own again, and we are proud to be Americans. Thank you.
Father, how come it seems like the base here and the people are kind of afraid of the people here? They run the helicopters, they're running all their sound systems. What's going on? Why are they reacting that way?
You know, it's part of their psychological warfare. We come here in the name of peace. We gather in the name of nonviolence. That's our way. And that kind of threatens them. That's part of our country. We are so aggressive. What we are doing, in Iraq, what we have been doing in Latin America, our foreign policy is rooted not in peace and nonviolence, helping others. It's rooted in violence and militarism, and it's getting worse. And so, I mean, that's part of where they're coming from. It's part of that aggressiveness. But it does not intimidate us. You know, we are here again to express our support and solidarity with sisters and brothers of Latin America. We want that school shut down. We want our troops in Iraq to come home, not later, not in 5 months, 11 months. Now. This is, you know, it's a grave injustice here. And we've got over 20,000. I would say a little over half would be students, university students, college students, high school students. And to be honest, the students give me a lot of hope. They've become an integral part, sort of the backbone of our movement. And so we move ahead with a lot of hope.
We went to the what's called the counter rally yesterday just to talk to some of the folks there, and it was called God Bless Fort Benning. What do you think about that? Is God blessing Fort Benning?
To me, this is heresy. But it's, you know, ignorance of God, ignorance of U.S. foreign policy. The greatest enemy in our country is ignorance, you know. And I have to say this, God does not bless war. God does not bless Fort Benning, where soldiers are being armed and trained and taught to kill. God does not bless killing. God does not bless aggression. God does not bless violence. And we have to simply say that to this God Bless Fort Benning group. Basically what this is about, George Bush and the architects of the war and many at the Pentagon have become very skilled at taking the lie and calling it truth, taking evil and calling it good. And God Bless Fort Benning is doing just that. They're trying to use God and God's blessing to legitimize their killing, their aggression, their death. And we can only simply say, no, God does not bless your killing. God does not bless your wars, your aggression toward others.
And available to the civilian community. The sole purpose of this installation is to provide for the military training of soldiers. This policy is completely consistent with the American constitutional tradition that the military must remain politically neutral and under the control of a democratically elected civilian government.
Porque de la Cruz Agüero, 18 years old. Presente.
Santiago Vivanco.
Presente.
Roberto Santucho.
Presente.
This has been an incredible journey for myself, and I'm so glad I came here, and I'm so glad that everybody who came here, who participated in this and made this a very special and powerful event. And I believe that the energy of this event and the unified voice that everybody brought to this event and took out with them is going to carry beyond these gates, beyond these walls, beyond this school of assassins and Americas, and maybe will change the voice and conscience of America.
Let there be peace in my heart where there is pain. May there be healing again. Send out a wave of peace to the world. Where there is hate, let there be love. Where there is fear, we can wash the fear away. Send out a wave of peace to the world. In every shining moment, in the darkest of the night, we must reach from deep within ourselves to radiate the light. Where there is despair, let there be